Fans weren't prepared for the news that followed Val Kilmer's death, which shocked the world as the entertainment industry mourned the loss of a major star. The results of Val Kilmer's autopsy were released. Everyone was left wondering what transpired during his final days due to the disturbing and shocking facts contained within. You won't find this narrative in the news. You thought you knew everything about Val Kilmer's last days, but there was a truth behind all the accolades and movie montages. The story's contents will astound you, so be patient. The unexpected passing of Val Kilmer on April 1, 2025 has left Hollywood in mourning. The news shocked people all around the globe, including in Hollywood. The 65-year-old Val Kilmer passed away. His roles in Batman Forever, The Doors, and Top Gun brought him widespread renown as an actor. Pneumonia symptoms were the root cause, as stated in the official release. A lot of people paid their respects, and the story went viral, but I still felt like it was missing something. The accolades started rolling in almost immediately. Michael Mann, who directed Heat alongside Kilmer, praised him as an energetic, dynamic actor who transformed every scene in which he appeared. Goodbye, friend. I will long for your presence. You were an adventurous, imaginative, and courageous spark plug, Josh Brolin wrote in a letter. Val Kilmer was a beloved actor, director, and singer, and many expressed their sorrow at his passing. A legend on-screen and off-screen was the official message from the Top Gun account. Rest in peace, Val Kilmer. Director Francis Ford Coppola remarked that Kilmer's natural talent only intensified with age, and a black and white photo of him as Tombstone's Doc Holliday went viral on Slash. All of the messages shared a common tone of shock and grief at the suddenness of the loss. There were lengthy messages and shorter ones. Even so, behind all the comments, flowers, and media attention, there were whispers. For a long time, word got out that Val Kilmer was ill. He battled throat cancer for a long time in the public eye. He finally broke the news to everyone in 2017, after years of rejection and speculation. With the exception of a final strong performance in Top Gun Maverick, fans watched as he lost his voice, had breathing problems, and faded from public view. His return to the screen with the aid of voice AI and creative shooting let many people know it was time for him to go. When they heard the news, most people assumed that the long-term effects of his cancer treatment were the cause of his death. It was expected that a body that was already frail would contract pneumonia. Everyone was taken aback by what transpired thereafter. Tributes continued pouring in as Kilmer's death drew near, and the media aired incessant highlight reels of his finest performances. But a different conversation started when the doors were closed. His loved ones, former colleagues, and even relatives started to confess that they hadn't realized how dire things had gotten. There were indications from multiple sources that Val Kilmer had been increasingly isolating himself in the months leading up to his death. He ignored calls, turned down guests, and turned down offers of assistance. His companions quickly started to question his disappearance from public view, which had persisted for months. For some reason, rumors that he had multiple hospital visits in the previous year never got reported in the media. The official cause of death was pneumonia, so why was the full autopsy report withheld for such a long time? In the midst of all the accolades, these questions could have easily slipped the minds of some writers, but they persisted. The autopsy allegedly revealed details that were shocking and unexpected, leading to widespread rumors. There were indications that Kilmer's final days might have been more sinister than anyone had realized. Yet at this moment, all were depressed. Val Kilmer's old interviews, film clips, and pictures of a happy Kilmer in his prime were all over social media, and fans watched his movies again and again. Despite the general sadness, a subtle unease pervaded the air. The narrative of his demise was recounted in the news accounts, but the truth remained concealed in the details of his final medical report. Everyone was taken aback when it eventually made it to the surface. the mysterious and meteoric climb to Hollywood stardom of Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer was someone else before the funeral, honors, and inquiries about the results of the autopsy. He was an unstoppable force in Hollywood, the kind of man who could steal the show while assuming a persona. Yet, even before he passed away, he was a man encircled by rumors, problems, and secrecy. The ascent of Val Kilmer was simple and fast to recall. He was born in the city in 1959 and spent his formative years in the Golden State. Even as a young child, he showed an interest in the arts. He made history at the time as the youngest student ever admitted to Juilliard, the world-renowned acting school. After that, the phone from Hollywood started ringing. His breakout role was in the 1984 comedy Top Secret, where he demonstrated his ability to go from charming to insane. However, he became famous after the 1986 release of Top Gun. Tom "Iceman" Kazansky, portrayed by Kilmer, was Tom Cruise's cocky rival. In a sense, he became the story's protagonist. He had a meteoric rise to fame after that, playing roles such as Jim Morrison in The Doors, which shocked even Morrison's friends, and Doc Holliday in Tombstone, where his portrayal of the Southern gunman became famous, came so easily to him. In the smash hit film Batman Forever from the 90s, he played the role of the Dark Knight. Regardless, that position was not without its share of challenges. As his star began to rise, rumors began to circulate that Val Kilmer was a pain to work with. Rumors circulated about locations used in filming. The board of directors found him unreliable, hostile, and difficult to collaborate with. On the wild set of The Island of Dr. Moreau, Kilmer got into so many brawls with the crew and cast that one director resigned. He was characterized by Joel Schumacher as psychologically troubled and described as the most challenging actor he had ever collaborated with in Batman Forever. Following these accusations, Kilmer stated that he was unfairly accused due to his perfectionist nature, desire to fully immerse himself in his roles, and fearlessness in expressing his opinions. However, the harm to his reputation persisted. He subtly withdrew from the limelight and became less bankable and famous in the early 2000s. However, Kilmer possessed an irresistible charisma that captivated audiences. Producers persisted in hiring him and viewers persisted in watching despite reports that he was moody. A man seemed to be fighting an inner demon that had nothing to do with his on-screen persona. Illness followed. Rumors began circulating in 2014 regarding Kilmer's deteriorating health, although he remained silent on the matter. Nobody mentioned his noticeable weight loss, his raspy voice, or the public events he had to cancel. For years, he insisted he had cancer, even though his fans and friends could see something was wrong. Even in 2017, Kilmer refrained from repeating it, despite undergoing radiation, chemotherapy, and a tracheotomy, the procedure that removed his voice. He kept his battle with throat cancer a secret. When he finally addressed the issue, his fans appreciated his candor. They lauded his resilience when he re-emerged into public view, gaunt but beaming. Top Gun Maverick featured his return as Iceman, which they viewed as a victory and an opportunity to rectify past mistakes. A lot of things were kept from the world by Kilmer anyway. This became more apparent as you reflected on his life. While her roles were certainly memorable, there was also a great deal of tension, secrecy, and mystery surrounding the production for many years. His career wasn't the only time this happened. Even those closest to him, including his family and friends, were unaware of his incessant need to remain hidden. It wasn't limited to the time he was sick or working. Even in death, it would linger with him. Worst part of his story, it wouldn't make it into interviews or the press. What was discovered following his demise would form the basis of it, a private quarrel. Throughout his battle with cancer, Kilmer remained silent. The public life of Val Kilmer was a highlight reel for a long time. He was seen smiling in interviews, walking the red carpet, and appearing in blockbuster films. Kilmer was embroiled in a secret war he refused to discuss with the media. He had already lost nearly all of his possessions when word got out. It started off quietly in 2014. Even his devoted followers could tell he was different. He appeared less robust and leaner. His voice had a raspy, coarse quality when he was in the company of others. Pictures of him looking weak were blurry, events were canceled, and he was supposedly in the hospital. Kilmer consistently denied reports that he was seriously ill whenever the media inquired. It was obvious he wasn't okay, but he insisted on claiming otherwise. Not until 2017 did the truth emerge. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Kilmer confirmed what many suspected. Someone had informed him that he had cancer of the throat. His speech was irrevocably altered by the 3 years of radiation, chemotherapy, and tracheotomy that he endured. He downplayed it by joking about his feeble voice and insisting he was fine, as is typical of Kilmer. That wasn't, however, the whole story. They spared his life by removing nearly all of his possessions. His voice, which had been heard in films such as The Doors and Tombstone, had now diminished to a barely audible whisper. It was difficult for him to eat and breathe due to his poor health. His usual work style was rendered useless to him. For an actor who had spent his entire life on screen, this was the pits. But sympathy wasn't what Kilmer was after. Contrarily, he made an effort to alter the narrative. In 2021, he released Val, a deeply personal documentary. His children were instrumental in its creation. Using voiceovers and home videos spanning his life, the film chronicles his journey from childhood to stardom in Hollywood and his battle with cancer. Truthful and raw, it was difficult to watch at times. Instead of seeing the charismatic celebrity, onlookers saw the frail man who had become famous. Val gave fans a chance to see the man behind the stories and characters for the first time, and it was a relief for many. However, not even the documentary covered every angle. Kilmer was forthright about his illness, but he withheld details from his loved ones, including doctors that they would later claim were confusing. His victory over cancer was reported in the lead story. He had recovered enough to lead a peaceful life in Los Angeles, where he continued to create art, spend time with his family, and complete occasional solo projects. Even though he was recovering, his closest friends and family members understood that he was still not entirely safe. The tracheotomy put him in danger at all times. His defense system was so weak that it was difficult for him to eat, speak, and breathe on a daily basis. Aside from the obvious physical harm, there were indications of something more profound, an emotional one, including feelings of isolation, withdrawal, and an increasing reluctance to allow anyone access to his world. No one remembered the previous Val Kilmer. His health continued to deteriorate behind the scenes, despite the positive news reports regarding his comeback. His closest friends and family also noticed that he stopped reaching out to them during his final months. He could have handled himself. It had become so bad that no one could see it coming. Everyone assumed Kilmer's battle with cancer was over when he beat it. His wounds from the war were deeper than anybody realized, and this was something that even his loved ones failed to grasp. Those scars reappeared in the most bizarre and terrifying ways imaginable. His return in Top Gun: Maverick seemed like a frozen moment to fans who grew up watching Val Kilmer dominate the big screen. After all, he was gone. Nearly 4 decades had passed since the release of the film that catapulted him to stardom by the year 2022. Once more, he was present. Tom "Iceman" Kazansky stood by Tom Cruise's Maverick. However, beneath the icy exterior this time, there was a vulnerable and new element. When Maverick was released, it was clear that Kilmer's voice would never sound the same again. He had to come clean about his battle with throat cancer. Many were unaware of the difficulty in re-establishing his television presence. The filmmakers, Cruise and Kilmer, all put in a lot of time and effort to make it happen. Kilmer's health was deteriorating and he was experiencing difficulty communicating. Even though he wanted to perform the simple scenes for both the people and himself, he had to put in a lot of work to do them. A chance to wrap up a story about a pivotal figure in his career finally presented itself. In order to resurrect Iceman, the artists employed a wide variety of techniques. Iceman communicated with others in the story primarily through text message. When he did speak, it was with very few words. Regardless, those lines were significant because Kilmer delivered them himself, making them not merely Iceman's. There was a combination of his actual voice and state-of-the-art AI voice technology that was audible in that scene. Kilmer had a software firm digitize his voice from archival recordings. Although the sound was barely audible, it was enough to bring back the memory of the voice. People were taken aback when the film was initially released. Critics and fans alike were deeply affected, with many citing it as a pivotal scene from the film. What really mattered was the symbolism behind the words, a man who had seemingly lost it all returning for a final bow. However, behind the scenes, things were not done the same. Employees on the set later remarked that the filming process was extremely challenging. Kilmer did not look good. Working on set was a daily struggle. Scenes were meticulously staged to minimize his speaking and movement requirements. Kilmer would stealthily depart, exhausted, as soon as the cameras ceased rolling. Even though Kilmer made a few appearances and interviews after the film's release, his star was clearly fading. He spent most of his time at home, surrounded by his children and close friends, practicing his art and writing. What the crowd saw was the triumphant return or comeback of a legendary figure. The true meaning of that Maverick scene wasn't a comeback, but rather a farewell. But most people fail to grasp this. To a large extent, Kilmer's farewell performance in Maverick was thoughtful.